live and online. It's Sleepless with Steve and the Movie Book Club with your host, Steve Pulaski.
Back and better than ever, Sleepless with Steve live on YouTube. We come to you every Wednesday evening, coast to coast, in living color, wherever you may be, however you may be listening. And we have got a loaded show because the movie we're talking about today is 3.5 hours long. So nice that we had to dedicate a whole show to it. Not much else to talk about, or it's not as relevant as the movie that we are going to discuss tonight. We will get to it. There is a lot to unpack, and I'm grateful to have my two loyal co-hosts beside me. We got Joe Viso, Dominic Guanzon right here, right now. You can already see Joe's very cool, very boomer-esque background over here, too. I like this. Where did you find this photo? I have to ask you, where did you find this photo? I like how you call him Marty. It's like how in Boston they call Tom Brady Tommy. You know what I mean? They always say, like, Tommy won us 7 Super Bowls. Nothing major. I like how you call him Marty.
I just realized my mic was muted, so that whole joke I just set up just ruined it now, anybody that was listening. Anyways, but, no, yeah, he's got that Italian citizenship, so I always call him Marty because I feel like he's like a friend.
You have more of a right to call him Marty than we do. You have more of a right to call him Marty than either me or Dominic have. Dominic,
Joe has seen the most high cinema out of all of us, aka Marvel.
Yeah,
so.
Exactly.
He's not even seen it. He's lived it. Yeah. He's lived it.
Have you guys ever seen the movie Spider-Man? I have a collectible figure here from it.
Scorsese's Italian, Joe's Italian. These are biographies of Joe's life at the end of the day.
I love how quick the internet was like, who is this old guy? Fuck him. And it's like, okay, look, he's a boomer, but he made like Goodfellas, Raging Bull. Like he still makes good movies, guys. Like
have to throw in Casino, show Casino
right,
some
right.
love.
It's funny because with the release of this movie, I feel like it's been a complete 180 now, and everybody on the internet is just fucking really loving this man. Like, it was like, man, when The Irishman came out, y'all were just crapping on him, but now with this movie, everybody's in love with him.
Oh, yeah. Don't get me started. Do not get me started. I remember when everybody on Letterboxd on my friends list was shitting on The Irishman. And now they're over here throwing 5 stars and likes to Killers of the Flower Moon. Don't think I don't see that shit.
I do too. Don't worry, Steve. I'm there with you.
We are going to get into it today. So glad we're a full force right here, 3 legs of the tripod, because there's a lot to discuss tonight. That's why I was glad, I mentioned it last week, that we weren't going to have a news topic unless something was, hugely breaking. Taylor Swift, the Eras Tour in theaters, is making all sorts of money. You know what I mean? That's great and everything, but we've got Killers of the Flower Moon to discuss tonight. And Is this the first Scorsese movie we've talked about? We've talked about Casino for required viewing. I know we have.
A long time
ago.
But
is this the first brand new Scorsese movie that we've talked about on Sleepless? I think it is.
We didn't talk about Irishman. We didn't talk about Silence. Yeah, we didn't talk about that.
We sure as hell did not talk about Wolf of Wall Street because we were all in high school.
Yes.
I saw that on Christmas with my mother, too. Where your ass was at.
Oh, my God.
I did. It was a Merry Christmas. Because it came out Christmas 2013.
Yeah.
Wolf of Wall Street. That was the opening day for that movie. Wow. Either way, Killers of the Flower Moon is out in theaters. And I'm excited to talk about it because Martin Scorsese releases a movie. It's an event. Saw Me and Catherine saw it on Saturday. 3.5 hours long. In a year, at least I think, in a year of a lot of long movies. There's been a plethora of long movies this year. You've had Beau is Afraid for one. That was, I think, 3 hours long. Had quite a few 2.5 hour movies. I think Doctor Strange was 2 hours or 2.5 hours long. So we've had quite a few long movies this year. And Killers of the Flower Moon probably stands the test as to be the longest at 3.5 hours long. So,
Wait, Doctor
lo-
Strange. What movie?
was it Into the Multiverse?
No, that was last year.
That was last year,
Yeah,
was it?
and that was
It felt so
exactly.
long. It felt like it was this year.
I was gonna say that was exactly 2 hours too. I was like kind of thrown off. I'm like, wait, what? Like, I'm trying to think. Yeah,
In the
I can't
multiverse that I was on, it was this year.
remember.
In the multiverse that I was on, it was absolutely this
Hey,
year.
with how many
Either way,
multiverse movies we get, yeah, it probably feels like that.
I think I was probably thinking of Ant-Man and the Quantumanium.
That or
was
Spider-Verse.
2.5 hours long. I know that. And yeah, there's just been a lot of long movies this year. This is the argument though to bring back intermissions.
Yeah.
Killers of the Flower Moon. But we're gonna dive into that. That's what the whole show is dedicated to. Martin Scorsese's Killers of the Flower Moon. And this is a movie that isn't going to go away anytime soon. This is a movie that's going to be discussed repeatedly, extensively for the next couple of years, or at least the next year, because it's definitely going to be an awards favorite. It's definitely going to be a movie that I think lingers in theaters too. I think it's one of those movies, anytime you get a long movie like this, I think that the staying power for it is stronger than a lot of people expect. But you have Leonardo DiCaprio, you have Robert De Niro, you have Lily Gladstone, the unsung hero of this movie, Lily Gladstone. You also have a lot of really good country singers. I mean, Jason Isbell, Sturgill Simpson, Jack White, not a country singer, but still a musician nonetheless. Killers of the Flower Moon is going to be discussed, debated, dissected, deservedly so, because there is a lot to get into with this movie too. And it is, again, anytime you get a long movie, it's one of those things where you get a long movie and you start debating it and you start thinking, like, is it too long for its own good? There were a handful of things that bothered me about this movie. The length was not one of them. The length was not one of them. 3.5 hours long. I would have happily sat through another hour of this movie. But I'm very interested to hear what you guys have to say about this. And Dom, based on that recommendation, I was going to go, or based on that remark, I knew I was going to go to you first. And I feel like I'm more convinced. Dom, your general thoughts on Killers of the Flower Moon?
Oh man, this film is. Let me first state that I know I'm kind of the history guy around here, and I actually did not know about this story really all too much, even though it's a kind of a famous true crime, and but really more of a like a textbook example of modern colonization and all that stuff. So I am glad for that, at the very least, as a basis for that. This movie is going to open up a lot of history for a lot of people that had no idea the depths, the craven depths in which America takes advantage of the people that came before it. But this movie is an incredible example of something that gets the message so damn right, but the execution is just falls somehow flat, but not exactly like disastrous. Not even close to disastrous, but something about it. Excellent, Joe. Fan freaking tastic. This is gonna be an incredible metagame, your background, but I am so waffling back and forth on this. I mean, look, solidly, I know that I felt deflated. I don't know, a couple hours in, and not in like in a way that I should. And I feel like Joe and I are going to have similar thoughts here, but I was so hype, like I want to say the first hour, and then something happens, but I don't know what. Is it a lack of, God damn it, Joe? I don't know if it's a lack of someone just didn't tell Martin Scorsese, like, hey, you need to cut this. Like, is there some George Lucas-esque kind of stuff going on here where if you give this guy complete creative control, and like maybe you don't work around him, maybe there's no one else to work off of. But I don't really know Martin Scorsese's like work style, if he really has that same kind of thing. And if it sounds like I'm really like being wishy-washy on my general impressions, it's because that's really how I feel. It because it comes back around in a way where I feel like I really want it to where it feels like I feel like it hits hard, but it kind of doesn't at the same time. So let me say this. This is one of the best acted movies that I almost didn't like. There's my hook of a movie. There's my hook of a review right there. Hook of a line.
I think you stole my line from my review, because I said it's one of the most well-acted disappointments that you will see this year.
Ooh, okay, so maybe we aren't on different terms here.
I was very curious to see where we were going to land on this movie too, because
we might be on the same wavelengths.
And not to distract from Joe, I'll
no,
let
it's
you
okay.
talk in a second, but no, you're absolutely right. This is a movie that, like, you know, the high of seeing a Scorsese movie. It's long. It's got some great performances.
It's an event in and of itself. It's like a Nolan film. It's like
it looks beautiful. Yeah. Like, coming out of this movie, if you would have asked me what I thought of it, I would have said very, very good movie. And then I thought about it. And then me and Catherine talked about it. And then I, sat with it for about a day before I wrote my review. And then the more I thought about it, the less I liked about it. And I was kind of shocked about it too, because this thing's got like a 96% on Rotten Tomatoes. For what that's worth, it's one of the most acclaimed movies of the year. It's got Leonardo DiCaprio, Robert De Niro, Martin Scorsese directed it, Lily Gladstone. She's already got the Oscar. You know what I mean? Put your chips in. If you're in a state that allows award show betting, bet Lily Gladstone. She's going to win the Oscar. But there's a lot about this movie that left me underwhelmed. I cannot deny it. Joe, what do you say about Killers of the Flower Moon?
I disagree. In some ways. Mainly I do disagree.
Let's get this descent going. Come on.
This weekend was so interesting to see how it played out, because I normally avoid Steve's reviews. I don't text Dom if he saw the movie and everything. Unfortunately, Steve's review came across my feed on Facebook, and I read the tagline of what Steve was saying, the most well-acted disappointment you will see this year. And I was shocked, because every other film guy I talked to was like literally loving this movie. Literally saying this is Scorsese's best movie and everything. I didn't go into this movie thinking it was his best movie, because I came out of The Irishman going, I love that movie. And everybody told me I was stupid for loving it.
I like Irishman more than this.
I do too. I will say that right now.
There needs to be a reevaluation of The Irishman too.
Yes, there really should be. So, I mean, I was talking to people that I went to school with. I'm in Discord servers with them and stuff, and they were like, this is the most beautiful, tragic film I have seen and everything. And it made me kind of look at this movie and go, I'm starting to feel like this is all coming from my white friends.
Yes. Okay. Yeah.
And I don't mean to be getting on a whole topic. I'm going to focus on the movie in just a bit. I just want to talk about the reactions I was seeing. I kind of was feeling like, is this white guilt that I'm seeing more than actual like
Let's hear
actual
from the
film
person of
appreciation.
color, the people of color on this show. I'm outnumbered.
Yeah, Joe, you're Latino, so
Yeah, well, there we go. Yeah, so I started noticing that. And so when I went into this movie, I didn't know who to believe. So I went in as a blank slate. I was like, am I going to come out as Steve, or am I going to come out as everybody else who's loving this movie right now? Upon leaving the movie, and still today, I think this is a good movie. It's probably going to be in my honorable mentions this year. But I've seen Scorsese do so much better in so many other films. His other 3-hour films that I've seen, I mean, there's probably like ones that I'm not realizing there are 3 hours. Like, I'm going to start the ones that I know for sure. Wolf of Wall Street, love that movie. Silence, love that movie. Irishman, love that movie. Out of those 3-hour-long films, to me, Killers of the Flower Moon does not really serve its runtime, I think, the best.
And you haven't seen Casino? You haven't seen Casino?
Okay, if Casino's 3 hours, that's another one. That's great.
Casino's 3 hours.
Okay.
Yes.
Sorry, was your metric like recent Scorsese, like in the past decade?
Sort of.
Years?
I guess sort of. Yeah. I mean, like Casino. Other films that he may have directed that are 3 hours that are just not coming to my mind. I don't know.
He's knocked out I think he's knocked out almost all of them, if not all of them, that are 3 hours long.
Well, then
truthfully.
shit. All right. I think
Casino was the only one I noticed that was not mentioned.
I don't think this movie had to be 3.5 hours long. That being said, I didn't mind the runtime, similar to what Steve said, because I was enjoying most of the movie. I especially was enjoying the movie the longer it got on. But similar to Dom, God, it's so weird. Even though I like this movie, I have a lot of similarities to you guys. There is about an hour of this movie that I feel it gets lost in doing some gangster shit that Scorsese is used to doing.
Well, so okay. Well, did it get lost in getting some gangster shit? Because I feel like that's the stuff I might have liked. I don't know.
I didn't, only because he wants us to feel so sad for these people that are getting murdered and taken advantage of. But other than Lily Gladstone, nobody really has screen time to actually like show their true character. That when they that when they do get killed in such brutal and god awful ways, getting shot in the head and you see the blood splurt out, getting their head carved open, stuff like that. I mean, like Lily Gladstone's family, we see her go through like this horrible moment in her life where each of her sisters are being executed, straight up just executed, and I only care about seeing her reaction because I feel bad for her. I don't care about the mom. I don't care about the sisters. I don't care about any of them. Instead, and this is probably gonna be the hottest take I'm giving here on this show. Instead, we're more focused on Robert De Niro's character, who is William Hale, and his nephew Ernest Burkhart, played by Leonardo DiCaprio. And here's my hot take: I think Leo sucked in this movie. Honestly, I did not enjoy his performance. This is my biggest letdown of Leonardo DiCaprio performances I've seen in a while. And I get, this isn't supposed to be his movie, but it very much felt like a caricature the entire time I was watching it.
Let's talk about that point specifically.
Okay.
I agree that let's specifically talk about the white actor here. Yes. Let's no, because I think it's an important point, but the people are gonna I think take the wrong way, which is that I think DiCaprio's character is written
great,
handled weirdly.
Oh, okay. I thought the character was written fine.
I kind of like the idea of his character, which I guess is also true to real life. That he's this let's put it in internet terms. He's a freaking beta. He's a freaking beta of a man. He's weak. He's easily manipulated, and he's. I
think I called him a gullible bastard in my review.
He's a bastard. He's a son of a bitch. He's just a weak, ineffectual man. Not even an evil guy that you can kind of respect. Just a pathetic specimen of a man. And for this kind of movie, I think it works. right? I think it's fine when someone is on. I think it's perfectly fine. I think Wolf of Wall Street has proven that you can have a complete piece of shit character. Leonardo DiCaprio has proven that you can have a complete piece of shit.
But Belford was interesting, though. Jordan Belfort was interesting. Ernest Burkhart is a one-dimensional gullible bastard.
Yeah.
Throughout this whole thing.
And so is William Hale. Robert De Niro's great, don't get me wrong. And this is
fantastic.
Probably my favorite performance
I loved him in this movie.
Yeah, probably my favorite performance I've seen him since The Irishman. Because he's either doing stuff like The Irishman or he's doing.
He hasn't done much since The Irishman. That's not very high praise.
He does stuff like at War with Grandpa and stuff like that.
I'm gonna mention Amsterdam.
De Niro's great. De Niro's great here.
Yeah.
I'm gonna bang my fist on the table for De Niro. De Niro's great here because he will stab you in the fucking back. Like with your eyes wide open and you won't even notice it. I'll give De Niro his flowers here because he's got this like sociopathic, smiley politician edge to him. Ernest Burkhart, it's not a fault of DiCaprio. That's the mistake I think people are making. It's not that DiCaprio gives a bad performance. It's that Ernest Burkhart is not a dimensional character in this movie. And he's not dimensional, which is to follow throughout this whole movie.
It's fine, and it's fine if he's that one-dimensional. But the problem is it seems the film focuses way too much on him. And I understand he's technically the
more
protagonist.
Interesting woman's in the bed for an hour and 20 minutes.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Lily Gladstone is so captivating. I haven't really seen her in much else, which apparently she's played strong Native American performances in indigenous, performances in so many other movies, which I think is awesome. In many other respects, people might be, blaming her for being, too stereotypical or too, the same character over and over again. But no, she manages apparently to pull it off so well in every damn, creative work that she's in. And Killers of the Flower Moon, absolutely so as well. But yeah, and I don't even know if this is the real history. I didn't have time to look up the real history here all that much, but still, yeah, the first half of her character in this movie is, charming, captivating, fun, and like her slyness when DiCaprio's, trying to woo her. It's like, man, she wears the effing pants in this relationship so hard.
Color.
Exactly. Which is a fun way to write that relationship. I think so too. And then it's like, okay, I get she is being abused on so many levels. But if you write her as being in an effing bed suffering for like a 90 minutes of this movie or whatever, it just comes across as bad on so many levels. And it's like, this is torturous to the point where it's not even fun anymore. Or like, not even fun, but like just it's overwrought. And it just sucks. And I was like, this is getting one-dimensional for her at this point. And
somebody said this, and I don't want to agree with it. I really don't. But you know what? Text me by Oscar time, and I might. Somebody called Killers of the Flower Moon on Letterboxd Scorsese's Green Book.
Yep.
And I hate to admit it. But it's kind of the case.
It kind of is.
It's kind of Scorsese's Green Book here, because I feel like you're subjugating the more interesting character here. I feel like, and it just so happens to be somebody of color, you're subjugating the more interesting character in this movie. You're positioning it on a one-dimensional, one-note Caucasian character, and at the end of the day, it kind of shows you too, like it does a disservice to the story. I think the worst thing about this movie is that, and Catherine read the book too. Catherine read at least some of the book too, and we were talking about this after we saw it, and I even read too, just some other essays after the movie, that the movie reshuffles the events of the book. It kind of does like a reordering of the events in the movie or of the book. And I started to think about it too, is like the movie shows its cards very early when William King Hale, De Niro's character, tells Ernest Burkhart, this is what we're gonna do.
Yeah.
This is what we're gonna do. We got to get the head rights. We got to get the head rights of the Osage in order to get the money, in order to get the land rights and everything like that for the oil. And it sort of sucks the suspense out of it. And everything I've read about the book, everything that I've heard about the book, talks about how like there is an inherent mystery here to why the Osage people are dying inexplicably, why Molly's family all of a sudden is dying in odd ways. Is it an illness? Is it a sickness? Is it something like that? But the movie kind of takes the air out of the sails within the first 20 minutes and tells you, you know what I mean, the grand scheme of things. There's no suspense. It's not like in Casino or in Goodfellas where these people that we kind of get to know, that we see in the background and whatnot, they start getting whacked left and right. Goodfellas, they end up in the back of a freezer of a meat truck. They wind up dead in a hotel in Casino and stuff like that after spending an hour and a half with them. These are just faceless characters that we knew were going to die at the end of the day, because it's outlined within the first 20 minutes of the movie, between the conversation between Hale and Burkhart.
And so even though I'm the one that likes this movie, and I'll get to what I like about the movie eventually, because I'm more focusing on the criticisms, because I'm just shocked actually how I felt leaving the film, noticing like, well, like I didn't love this movie, but like, because again, everybody I've been talking to is loving this movie. And I feel like you're all like you're kind of just giving this to Scorsese because he is Scorsese. And it's just like, I'm not that way about directors. I didn't like Tenet because it was made by Christopher Nolan, but I sure as shit loved Oppenheimer because Oppenheimer was a well-made movie. This, on the other hand, this to me, it's good. But it's like, again, I've seen Scorsese do so much better with similar run times and just have turned in a better product overall. That hour of just watching what we knew was going to happen, which is these people getting brutally murdered, it gets boring after a while. And it's like the shock value of you showing me killing these Native Americans over and over and over again in horrible ways, it just makes me go like, okay, how about we develop something here? And again, when Lily Gladstone, for this hour in the movie where she's laying in bed slowly dying, again, you're taking the most interesting character, the person that I've latched on to like the most and want to see in most of the films, and you've now taken her performance and you've now reduced it to just wheezing and putting on makeup and, just being like, just literally sitting in one spot. And I have to rely on Leo, which, okay, I mean, I guess to Steve's credit, if I were to think about it, it's mainly due to how that character is. I thought the way he's written to be dumb and stupid, I thought that was fine. But now thinking about it, yeah, he is more one-dimensional because of those traits and everything. That
he shares way too much screen time for that. Way too much screen time for that. It becomes boringly gratuitous. And Lily Gladstone, what they do to Gladstone is the like epitome of that. But there's other things where it's like, you are dragging this out, please. Yeah. Oh my god. There's some smash cuts to like some murders, which is fine, but you just like a little blip here and a little blip there, and then like 30 minutes of wafting in between.
And those are the murders that ended up in the trailer too. That like,
oh really? Okay.
Like going back to the trailer that showed like some of the Osage people getting killed and stuff like that, and that's how they're presented in the movie. That like first 30 minutes of the movie where you see like 2 or 3 or 4 members of the Osage Nation get killed. And there's no context in the trailer. There's no context in the movie either.
And we spend so much time of the Osage people being like, who did these murders? We need to find out who. And it's like the whole time we're sitting there like, we know who did it.
It plays the Osage as fools. Yeah, it really does. It kind of does at points. The way the movie is structured plays the Osage people as morons.
It does. And it makes Lily Gladstone like, again, when they start out this movie and it shows them like on this high of like, they're sharing this, they have this wealth. They have white people who are their drivers, white people who serve them food, are their maids and everything. It's like, holy crap, that's actually like really cool to see and everything. Like, these Osage people had that much money that like, totally like swapped to here where it's like a white person is now being like their servant and everything. And it goes from like showing them in such high power and everything to just like, do you guys like, and again, I understand these people didn't have the ability to like, because you have William Hale who has, he's the sheriff of the town and everything. A lot of people who are in actual power in this town are white and everything. But I mean, like again, it just, the way it's presented, it's like they're just. It's really just like, come on, like somebody. How are you guys not reacting to this sooner? How long did you actually let these deaths go on before? Yeah, okay, now we'll go to DC and try to do something.
Can I give credit to, before we cut to intermission here, the Zoom sponsored intermission? Can I give credit to two people here? You're not going to know them by name, but let me try to contextualize them. It's Tally and Yancey Redcorn. It's Tally and Yancey Redcorn. They are the two Osage leaders that gather that initial meeting after Molly's sister dies, after Anna dies, and they gather that meeting. I'm not even kidding. I'm not even trying to be hyperbolic. Those two dudes were great.
They were, yeah.
They were excellent, and they will not get the recognition in this movie that they deserve.
I like their scenes so much, but both you guys are so right. The movie sequencing just plays them like idiots when it should be.
These two dudes, they give these monologues. Tally and Yelly Redcorn, they give these monologues, and they're talking about like the new Osage, the infants and everything, and then the ones that are too old that are going to die soon because the Osage life expectancy is like in the 50s and everything. These guys were. I swear to God, I even told Catherine when we saw it in the theater, I'm like, these guys are good, man. I'm like, I swear to God, I almost had tears in my eyes listening to these dudes because they're not actors either. They have fewer than 4 film credits to their name. I looked them up. They have fewer than
real
4
shit they
film
were
credits
right there.
They
you feel the anger. You feel the anger
like
in what they're saying.
Generational anger.
Yeah.
In these characters or in these people, because they're not even really playing characters, they're playing themselves. And Tally and Yancey Redcorn, remember the names, because those dudes, they were exceptional. Loved them. Loved some of my favorite performances in the movie, guaranteed not to get any recognition. I hate to cut this off right now. We will be back in about 60 to 90 seconds after our Zoom-sponsored intermission. Plenty to dig into about Killers of the Flower Moon, the new Martin Scorsese movie. Don't go anywhere. Back after this brief intermission, right here on Sleepless with Steve. Back and better than ever, Sleepless with Steve, live and in living color on this Wednesday evening. Last Wednesday of October, Zoom-sponsored intermission's over. We're talking Killers of the Flower Moon. We have a lot to say about this movie, as I expected. Was not sure how we were going to come into this, too, because this is truthfully one of the most acclaimed movies of the year. This is one of the most acclaimed movies of the year, and in some ways, I can see why. I'm a huge Martin Scorsese fan. I've said this before. Huge Martin Scorsese fan. Casino, one of my all-time favorite movies. Everybody says Goodfellas. I say Casino. Always been a Casino fan. Love Goodfellas.
I'll raise you up. I say Mean Streets.
Mean Streets is a great movie.
Okay.
Hey, I'm going to raise you. I'm going to double down right here. You know what's an underrated Martin Scorsese movie right now? And I was rereading my review of it this week before the show. You know what's an underrated Martin Scorsese movie? Hugo.
Dude, I love Hugo.
Book, The Magical World of Hugo Cabaret. Hugo is an underrated movie. Hugo is Martin Scorsese's BFG. Steven Spielberg's BFG. Another movie nobody talked about, nobody cared to see. Hugo, Martin Scorsese, his first and only 3D movie. Look it up. Excellent film. As a fan of the novel, even before I watched the movie, great movie. Another one of my favorite top 5, top 3 Scorsese movies, Bringing Out the Dead. Nicolas Cage as an ambulance driver. Love that movie.
All right, we get it. You guys like Martin Scorsese. Sure.
You know, I'm not even Italian. I got no excuse over here.
Have you heard of a film called Gangs of New York? Because I think that's his best movie.
Gangs in New York does not deserve the hate that it gets either.
It gets hate?
Did you know that the King of Comedy inspired the Joker? Did you know that?
I did not know that. My God.
Rupert Pupkin. Look him up.
Ladies and gentlemen, Rupert Pupkin. Ladies and gentlemen.
You know, he directed
the latest sensation.
King of Comedy,
Rupert
another
Pupkin.
great one. Hey, what y'all know about Kundun? What you know about Kundun? The one about the Dalai Lama. The Dalai Lama movie that Martin Scorsese made. Look it up, because there's actually a lot of tonal similarities between Kundun and Killers of the Flower Moon. We're not going to get into it right now, but all I recommend is look up Kundun. 1997. Available to watch on YouTube.
You were talking about some of the great names in this film, in this cast so far, like Lily Gladstone, like Yancey Redcorn. I have to give a shout out to another powerful performance here. One that does a lot of the history justice is Jason Isbell. Was so effing funny in this movie. No, I'm kidding. That's kind of a joke, but also like Jason Isbell as
Bill Smith.
As Bill Smith was so effing funny. His presence here was like, I want to punch you in the face so bad. Something is wrong with you, sir.
Shout out to all the singers turned actors that Scorsese got in this movie. Between
it's so
Jason
weird.
Isbell, Sturgill Simpson, Jack White in that epilogue scene.
Yeah.
There's quite a
crazy.
few here.
Let me say this. This film and the problems that we're having with it, I think Steve hit the nail on the head, which is that the approach was off, and it shows the worst of both worlds. So I am down for a 3.5 hour film. I'm okay with that. And I hope this film, for those who don't like it, I hope it doesn't kill the power of a longer runtime for people, as if all movies need to be 2 hours max. That's not the case. I don't believe in that. Especially if it's Martin Scorsese. He's clearly proven he can pull it off. But here's the thing with this film. It's that either you maintain the mystery and the suspense by hiding, or at least veiling further, who is doing the murders here, and stretch that suspense out, or you do what this film did and show your hand right away of, these are the piece of shit characters who are gonna just systematically murder and abuse these indigenous people, and then you cut it down to something a little more hard hitting, which is what a lot of those smash cuts were trying to do. But then you have the worst of both worlds here, which is that you're trying to rely on some kind of dramatic irony of us knowing who it is, but unfortunately, you've really stretched it out, and you've lost all agency. You've lost all. Yeah, it makes every victim here look worse for wear, because they understandably are trying to figure out what's going on, but because we like that does not translate to the audience because we know already, and it's not a suspense that we're enjoying.
I
and it yeah.
I was gonna say, I think if you want to take that approach, I think William Hale should have been the main character, and we should have been following him.
Honestly, yeah,
we should have been following him the entire time, because you would have seen more of mastermind behind the scenes planning, him manipulating more. You would have been able to also feel more, what's the best way of saying it, feel more sorry for the Native Americans as well, because like, you know, it'd be like, okay, well, you could see why they didn't think it was him for so long and everything. But when it's Ernest Burkhart, and like every 2 to 3 criminals they hire, one of them like messes up royally to where it's clearly a murder and everything. And it's just like, how did this go? I get it. It went on as long as it did, but the way it's presented just makes it go.
It was a funny sequence, but yeah, it's just it dries up in the context of this 3.5-hour runtime approached wrongly. And it's like, yeah, no, again, I just have to give it to De Niro, because like De Niro plays a better crime guy in this movie than he did in The Irishman with all those other legendary crime film actors, because he's not, it's not a very physical role. It's all
you know when I started to get pissed with this movie, not to interrupt you. You know when I started to get pissed with this movie was in the scene where, I'm not going to give any context in it, no spoilers. It's the scene when the dynamite blows the house up.
Yeah.
It's that scene. You know what pissed me off about that scene was that, like, you're not terribly confused as to who did it. But what pisses me off about that scene, watching it unfold, is that, like, you see Molly's, like, screaming in agony. And you get about 5 seconds of that.
Mm-hmm.
Fade to black.
Yep.
Fade to black. And it's like, I think of another filmmaker, Gus Van Sant, who I like a lot, made Elephant one of the greatest school shooter movies of all time. In terms of just Elephant, Last Days, which was loosely, quote unquote, loosely based off of Kurt Cobain's lifestyle. Great film. But you look at Gus Van Sant's filmography and the way he's done movies like Jerry and Elephant and Last Days, and it's like, you would have lingered on that screaming. You would have lingered on that agony. You would have made the audience sit uncomfortably with that.
Yeah.
And then it's 5 seconds, fade to black. The cut scene is the house getting put off. You know what I mean? The fire department, putting out the house fire and everything like that. I think that's when this movie started to piss me off, was that you don't even
there were
get
more
the
shots
grief.
of DiCaprio being like disheveled and upset during the house explosion scene.
Yeah, and then the whole
Gladstone,
epilogue scene of that whole thing is like, you fucking did it. Like, that's I think what aggravated me the most about this movie, is that, like, if this story was going to be told in an adequately compelling way, assuming it was, take out Scorsese, an adequately compelling way, this story was to be told from the perspective of Molly and her family. That's who this story should have been told from.
Yeah.
Now there's a good movie to be made from the perspective of William King Hale, because we've seen those types of movies be made, especially from Scorsese.
Yeah.
Whether it's Goodfellas, whether it's Mean Street, whether it's Casino, there is a good movie to be made here. But the fact that this movie basically tells us the whole, like, the unspoken secret of the movie in the very beginning of it, of who's doing these murders, it robs us of the suspense. It plays the Osage Nation for fools. And at the end of the day, what you're left with, and I haven't really even gotten to talk about this, one of the reasons I do not say that this is a bad movie or a mediocre movie is because, you know what? This movie is well made. It's well made. It's got these very, like, Terrence Malick, these, like, Malickian landscape shots. The music is very good.
The craft saves this movie so hard.
The music was my
the
favorite
craft
part.
saves. Yeah.
The craft's beautiful in this thing. And even the performances are good too. Mostly across the board, the performances are very good. And like I said, I had to go on my high horse over here about Tally and Yancey Redcorn over here, but it bears to be said. There are some really good performances. There's some really good scenes in this movie, and I never felt like it was too long. I wasn't bored by it. But at the end of the day, it's anticlimactic. I think it does a disservice. I think it does more of a disservice than a service to the Osage people at the end of the day. I don't think it tells a very remorseful story, and I think the way that it also tries to posit Ernest Burkhart in this movie is very slimy. How he loved Molly. He loved Molly. He went along with King's plan and everything, but he loved her. He loved her. That's that's where I think the multitude of problems of this movie stem.
But he loved money more. For me, more positive note. So, like Dom and I were talking about this in the green room before you came back in, Steve. Before we came back from our intermission, but we talked about this high that him and I both had for the first 30 to 45 minutes of this movie. And then for about the next hour is where a lot of these problems that we're bringing up start to show up and really linger and just sit in front of you for a long time. Maybe even an hour and 30 minutes. It's not until Jesse Plemons shows up that for me, this movie picked back up and at least became something that I can at least latch on and start rooting for. Because it was like, finally, now I feel like, okay, stuff is actually happening. Stuff is more unfolding. I'm watching how William Kang Hale is getting out of this situation, trying to unframe himself, trying not to become suspect number one. I get to see a police procedural with Jesse Plemons and a bunch of other FBI agents, and I get a pretty good courtroom like drama scene. That even when they bring in Ernest's character within this courtroom dilemma, and they have to like try and convince his stupid being not to like rat out his uncle and everything. That's to me like, all right, this movie picked back up again. But with saying all of that, once again, the natives are not really brought in at all throughout the rest of this movie. It's like once all these people are really killed off and Lily Gladstone is just sitting on that bed dying, you really don't. And I get it because the final shot of this movie, like there's two final shots really. There is like the ending shot to the events of the movie. And it's one last funeral for somebody that I won't give away. And compared to the first funeral that we saw, which is big, and a lot of people are there, compared to this next funeral that you see the differences there and everything. It is sad and everything. But again, it's just like, I feel like, I hate to say this because I did like this movie and I love this director, but Marty, I think you used these people just to tell a story, man, and you really didn't use them in the best way.
And don't get me started on that ending either. Don't get me started on that ending either.
Which one?
Because that ending is going to rightfully piss a lot of people off, myself included.
The epilogue of how like they, instead of doing the typical like photo, little bit of text of what
I think it was a very cool delivery.
I thought it was very creative, actually, yeah. But I get where Steve was going with this.
Yeah.
No. Here's the thing. I understand, especially after I read a little bit about it, the ending. And this makes me sound like such a pretentious asshole, and I hate that. But like, I understand what Scorsese went for, especially as an 81-year-old director who, especially with the Irishman, has been trying to stake a claim for legacy too. But the story too, especially as at the very end of the movie, as it finally gives Molly, Lily Gladstone's character, a little bit of grace and a little bit of a platform. It cuts to what ultimately is a hokey, self-referential epilogue that is all about like who gets to tell these stories, who is in charge of retelling this history, And it's like, Marty, I get it.
Okay.
Like, I understand what you're trying to make, but it does not. After sitting with this movie for 3.5 hours, and I'm one of the less pissed off ones about this ending than I think some people who go to the movies twice a year are going to be. I didn't think it was a very good ending at all. I really didn't. And I think it's going to piss a lot of people off at the end of the day, especially with how slow this movie moves.
The delivery of it and the craft of it is good. But within the context of the film that it just came after, it feels hollow, and a lot of people aren't gonna know why. But we tapped into it. We just tapped into it. So yeah, it
was a movie made for the writers of. It was an ending made for the writers of IndieWire. That's what it was.
Oh hell!
IndieWire. And Letterboxd, like, yeah, I get that, and I as part of that target audience, I understand that, but at the same time, though, it robs a movie that could have been buoyed by a very strong ending, a lot of dramatic heft in this thing, and that's what pissed me off the most about it too.
I want to say too, before someone's just like, well, that's what happened though. Like, they were robbed of being able, like, you know, other people told their story and everything, but this movie had the chance to actually tell their story, and it didn't do that. It's just because you acknowledge the fact that, like, yeah, these people got taken advantage of, and their story was never told. But the story that's being played out here is them getting taken advantage of, and their story not being told.
And you had a chance for Molly to tell that fucking story.
And it made me sit there.
But she's in bed for half of it.
And it made me sit there and like go like, why is everybody telling me this movie is so heartbreaking and all this shit? Because all it did is just make you feel guilty because you're white. And I'm just sitting there thinking, when it should just make you feel like, you know, rage and anger because these people's story was never told until now. Oh!
This is
I like
tragic.
this movie, by the way. I keep forgetting to tell you guys that.
This is tragic. I hope we're changing your mind in real time. No, I'm kidding.
You kind of are in some ways. I'm going to stick with still what I'm giving it and everything, but don't be surprised that, like, by the end of the year, I'm like, okay, you know what? The longer it sat with me, and, like, here's the thing.
That's what happened with Steve.
And this is the thing about this movie, though, is what I said is, like, coming out of it, if you would have asked me my initial impressions of it, I would have said it's a very good movie.
Yeah.
And then me and Catherine talked about it. I read a little bit about it, and I started to sit with it and let it stew in my mind a little bit. And then I'm thinking, like, there's a lot of this movie that fell very short, in my opinion. There's a lot of this movie that I'm like, well, wait a minute, too. Like, we're focusing on this character. We get told how these murders happen, but these Osage Nation individuals feel like they're getting played like morons throughout this. It's one of those movies that, like, you can be convinced that it's excellent. You really can be. Like, because it hits all the right beats. Robbie Robertson, God rest the dead over here. The movie's dedicated to him. Robbie Robertson does an excellent score with this thing. Yeah. The movie is shot beautifully. It is acted very well. Lily Gladstone, Robert De Niro. Don't forget the Redcorn brothers. I'm telling you right now, do not forget the Redcorn brothers. Everybody else is going to. But this movie is acted extremely well. But you start to kind of peel back the layers of this and even hold it in the same regard as, like, The Irishman or Hugo or some of Scorsese's later efforts. Like Silence with Liam Neeson. You start to hold it in this regard even too, and you start just to think, like, this is a deeply flawed movie in a lot of different ways, and it's disappointing in that regard.
Yeah. When I was
go ahead. Yeah.
When I was writing in my little Sleepless with Steve notebook here, that I keep right in front of me from time to time at the show.
Oh, it's a notebook.
Yeah, I do. It's got a little binder and everything. Oh, you can't get fucking. I hate these green screens, but it has like a little like thing that I can keep track of everything and whatnot. Anyways, I wrote down like Lily Gladstone, amazing performance and everything, favorite scenes, and then when I wrote down the favorite scenes of hers, I realized I'm like, this is all within the first act, and I really thought about it. And I'm just like, wait a minute. Yes. I'm like, yeah, no, wait, hold on. The longer I think about it, I'm like, and that's like, because, okay, to give context to the viewers and people who will watch this later, I saw this movie probably the most recent out of all these guys. I went Monday night. Yeah, I went Monday night, and, Tuesday went to work, today was the day I actually sat down during my lunch break and I was writing down just what I thought about the movie. And that's when more of the problems were occurring to me. Because I got, like, as soon as I came home, I went on my Discord channel with my guys and they asked me what I thought about it. I'm like, oh man, I really liked it. Like, you know, I'm like, I like The Irishman more, but like, this is, you know, this is probably gonna be like one of my favorites of the year. And then the more I kept writing stuff, I'm like, it's probably like an honorable mention for me. I did enjoy it and everything. And now talking with you guys, I still feel the same way, but it's like I see more what you guys are saying, and I feel like the more if I had kept writing, the more I would have been like, oh, well, crap, I probably would have ended up in their camp. To me, though, this film, like I said, when Jesse Plemons comes in, when the FBI comes in, to me, the movie just improved. The pacing picks up. There's a lot
when the
more,
white guy comes in.
Again, yeah, when the white savior comes in. Like the
dances with wolves, but with the FBI. No,
can you find the wolves in this picture?
And it's just like, you know, when Jesse Plemons comes in, sorry, it's just like Jesse Plemons. You know what's even messed up too, and it made me realize it. Jesse Plemons comes in, but there's also like this Native American young kid that comes into town, and he's piecing together the case. And I don't even know if that guy had a name by the end of the movie, man. And like he shows up and like he's like new to the town and he's working with the FBI, and it's like he had one long scene where they all piece it together. And after that scene, never showed up again. And I was like, who was this guy?
Was he an agent? I think he was an agent.
I don't know. And it's just like, again, missed opportunity there. Because the book, from what I understand, is from the perspective of the FBI. And they're piecing it together. If I'm wrong, correct me on that, but I believe that's what the book is about. But yeah, man, I was just sitting there, I'm writing it, and I'm just like, the longer I wrote it, I'm like, wow, for a 3.5 hour movie, an hour and a half of it, I did not enjoy, and that's not a good thing. And yeah, I could say, well, the movie got better as it went along, but it'd be different if it was like, hey, for the first hour is a bit bumpy, but the last hour got really good. But when it starts out so strong, and then for the entire second act, I would say, or for an hour and 30 minutes, majority of its second act, where it's supposed to make me feel certain ways, it's supposed to build up characters and everything, I just didn't care. Even during its last hour and a half, we get to this courtroom proceeding, they're figuring out the murders and everything. There's this whole big thing about one of the sisters who gets murdered. And it's like, they take forever to get to the revelation of it. And it's like, it's supposed to like hit you and you're supposed to be like, oh my God, I can't believe. But it's like, I knew who did it. We barely spent time with that sister. And the time we did spend with that sister, you guys made her look like a bitch. Like, you guys made her like unlikable and everything. To where like, when she dies, her
killers were telegraphed heavily. And she didn't deserve to die.
No.
But she didn't ingratiate herself.
No.
Also, in that
she had a story, but it got so whittled down, she just became a caricature.
She became a caricature of a drunk. And it was just like, wow, okay. You
got whittled down courtesy of Jack Daniels.
Yeah. a drunk, which is not the one image you want to associate with Native Americans.
Yeah, like they did such a better job.
Sure.
They did such a better job, I think, with Henry's character. Henry's character was the one other death in this movie that I felt actually sad by the end of it, because he at least had some time to like develop. You actually like felt sorry for him and learning more about him. There was actually a great reveal between him and Lily Gladstone's character. You were like, oh,
because he had
shit.
demons. He had demons,
and even the guy who ended up killing him actually had like a unique like way of like, you know, how that all paid off. And it was just like, wow, if only all the killings were handled in such this way, at least they were like, at least, you know, the character of the native who got brutally murdered was handled such, you know, as eloquent as Henry was, to where it's like I felt that much more sorry for them. I felt like that story was told, and I felt like that person was taken advantage of, but they weren't.
I'm going to add too right here before we parlay into closing thoughts. I'm going to add this too, because Jesse Plemons, we haven't talked much about him, but he is the BOI agent, the Bureau of Investigation, the precursor to the FBI agent who gets dispatched to investigate the Osage murders and everything. I just want to say this about Jesse Plemons. I know, Joe, I know you've seen it. Dom, have you seen Game Night?
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, I love that movie.
Okay. So one of the best scenes, anybody who's seen Game Night knows one of the best scenes in that movie is when Jesse Plemons catches Jason Bateman coming home with like 2 grocery bags full of snacks. And Jason Bateman tries to justify him how he got all these snacks. And Jesse Plemons goes, how can that be possibly profitable for Frito-Lay? And that fucking guy uses the same tone of voice in this movie when he comes up to Ernest Burkhardt's door, Jesse Plemons. He comes up to Ernest Burkhardt's door and he goes, here to investigate the murders. And Ernest goes, what about the murders? Or in some way. And Jesse Plemons goes, well, to find out who's doing them. He's the same tone of voice. And that's why Jesse Plemons is one of the unsung national treasures in movies. That's all I wanted to make. That's all I wanted to say. He is one of the unsung national treasures in movies and should be treated as such.
You mind if I get my closing thoughts here? I don't know. Dom, you have
anything? Go for it. We'll go Joe,
nope,
Dom, and then me.
You start high and we'll go down from there.
For me, I felt like throughout this review I did focus more on the negatives, and that's because I was just honestly shocked at the point in time of this movie that I was feeling so down on it, and I was kind of just looking at it and going, while I was even watching it, and then especially when looking back on it, these feelings that I'm sharing were feelings I was feeling while watching the movie. It's just I came out on such a high because I did enjoy the later parts of this movie. I enjoyed them a ton. I know like a lot of people, Steve even brought up, even Dom, are going to hate what they did with that ending. I just thought it was so creative that I was like, man, this is such a unique way to do an epilogue for these kind of movies and everything. But they totally brought up great points as to why, even myself when I went on a whole tangent again. It just shocks me too, like, you know, we get a director like Scorsese who I feel like, you know, could handle something like this and actually bring it like, you know, such great value to it and actually tell this story. And he's such a legendary filmmaker that this will get eyes upon a story like this. But at the end of the day, at some point, it did just feel like, man, you're just making another like Goodfellas gangster movie, but you're using Native Americans as the victims here rather than just mobsters and Italians. I did enjoy the look of this movie. I enjoyed the soundtrack. I enjoyed the acting from nearly everybody. I wish there was more screen time to people that were part of the Osage tribe and everything. I wish that De Niro like even had more time as well, because I felt like William Hale could have just honestly been the main character and Ernest be a supporting character. I wish the tables were flipped on that. I enjoyed how the second half of this movie goes, especially once the FBI gets brought in and they're involved. I very much enjoyed what happened there. This movie does so much right, but it also does so much wrong. For everything I do like about it, there's something that makes me like kind of just look down on it going, you should be better than this because you're Martin Scorsese. It really is shocking that this was one of my most anticipated movies of the year, and I came out like feeling a little disappointed, but still enjoying it enough to where I will give it an enthusiastic 3 out of 4 stars. I don't know how I feel about this by the end of the year. I do want to place a bet right now. As much as people are on a high about this movie, I bet by Oscar season, they will turn on this movie. They will turn on this movie like a dime. The only person they won't turn on is Lily Gladstone, because I do think she's got that Oscar on lock. But in terms of just like how people are praising this movie now and everything, it's going to get the typical Oscar flip by the time that comes around. And at least Dom and Steve were there from day one like they were with Halloween Ends. If I end up flipping like a pancake, then that's on me.
I wholeheartedly agree. Before we go to you, Dom, I'm just going to let you know right now, of all the movies that are going to get nominated for Best Picture this year, Killers of the Flower Moon is going to experience the most substantial drop in praise compared to where it's at right now.
Yeah.
So if there's a stock you want to sell, it's Killers of the Flower Moon, because it is, I'm telling you, it's going to precipitously drop. We saw it with Everything Everywhere All at Once last year. Once that movie started to get accolades and started to get showered with praise in award season and became the most nominated movie of that year for the Oscars, people turned on that son of a bitch like a turn signal. So I'm just saying right now, Joe's absolutely right on that. You wait for that to happen; it is coming. The sort of reverse praise of Killers of the Flower Moon,
Killers of the Critics Boom. No, this film is, I think, an incredibly good litmus test for a variety of things. If you want to like feel people out, on certain levels. Ask them about Killers of the Flowers Moon, Killer of the Flower Moon, and if on multiple levels, like are they just kind of like white guilt neolibs who just don't really engage all too much on the deeper story? They just want to feel better about themselves. See how they react to this movie. Are they like Marvel bros who hate any movie that lasts longer than 80 minutes? Ask them about this movie if they hated it for the wrong reasons, right? Too many Native Americans in this movie. No,
Yeah, as it woke.
Not enough white people. No. But ultimately, yeah, this movie did not sit well with me. Like 2 hours in, I started to feel really deflated, and I really couldn't put my finger on it, because the opening and then the ending were really good hooks, and the ending for a much worse reason. But ultimately, this film is carried by its acting and its craft. But even then, the carry cannot save at all what the writing and a lack of, I guess, really just the writing, the narrative, broader macro storytelling cannot put together what it just couldn't get together in the blueprint phase. So ultimately, this movie makes me mad in the same way Amsterdam did. David O. Russell's Amsterdam, which is taking a history that really, really, really deserves to be told and then just whiffing, just completely. Now, Amsterdam worse so. The craft in there was all over the place. That was a mess of a movie. Killers, Flower Moon can be a movie that can be comfortably sat through. But you'll just feel off about it, I think. If you have a good narrative sense, you have a good creative sense, if you have a sense for the storytelling aspect of stuff, it's gonna feel a little weird. And because it's a Martin Scorsese movie, who has done well as somewhat recently, because it's been a decade now, as Wolf of Wall Street, Silence. It's like, just because he's getting old doesn't mean he doesn't know what he's doing. Right, he's still got that good sense. Irishman, there's some like meta stuff there about his legacy and whatever, but serviceable movie, and a lot of people love it. Like I'm not going to argue with them on that. So, but like, dude, this is a 2 out of 4 star movie for me, because it makes me mad in the worst ways possible. You did the worst thing possible, which Joe loved. Clip that shit, Joe, man. That was a beautiful rant on how, ultimately the indigenous, the first peoples, the Indians here were all taken advantage of in multiple ways in this film that I just didn't want to see. I did not want to see.
Hashtag go see Wind River.
Justice for Wind River. Justice for Wind River at the end of the day. I'll be brief, and I will just say, too, that as a diehard Martin Scorsese fan, too, this is probably his most disappointing movie in the last 20-plus years. There's a lot of things to like about this movie, whether it's the performances, the cinematography, the music. Even though it didn't include Stadium Powwow, we can complain about that later. But there's a lot of things to really like about this movie, and I do think that it will mostly have a positive legacy. But at the same time, though, do not let that distract from the fact, though, that this movie is deeply flawed. It is a deeply flawed movie. And again, I reiterate what I said at the beginning. Usually with movies this long that I give less than 3 stars to, I'm bitching about the length. I didn't feel this was too long. I was never bored by it. I would have put up with another hour. I would have welcomed another hour in a way. I had no problem with this being 3.5 hours long. In a lot of ways, truth be told, I thought Beau is Afraid felt longer than this movie. I thought Ant-Man Quantumania felt longer than this movie. I was not bored by this thing. I was not put off by it. Really wasn't. Truly wasn't. But for one of the finest American filmmakers of this or any other generation, the shortcomings present in this movie, they feel inexcusable. They feel inexcusable because we've seen better of this genre. We've seen better by these actors too. Another movie too. I was rattling off at the beginning after this intermission. I was rattling off like Kundin and Bringing Out the Dead. What you know about The Aviator? That's another excellent Scorsese movie too. The first time Scorsese and Leonardo DiCaprio ever collaborated. What you know about The Aviator? But there's a swath of tremendous performances in The Killers of the Flower Moon, but it's buoyed mostly by its aesthetics, its music, De Niro's performance. And as soon as you start to really look back and think about what you witnessed over those last 3.5 hours, the more disappointing it becomes. I'll be the middle ground between you two. Joe gave it 3 stars. Dom gave it 2 stars. I give it 2.5. And I think it's a lock to be a nomination for Best Picture come next year. I think it's a lock. And I hope it is the weakest of the nominees, the 8, 9, 10 nominees, because that'll mean it's been a pretty damn good year for movies at the end of the day. Because if a Martin Scorsese picture is the weakest of the Best Picture nominees, that's saying something. And with that, we wrap up our show on Killers of the Flower Moon. What a great show. I knew I was right to make this last week. I even mentioned, I said, this is probably going to take up the whole show. And it rightfully did. We didn't run out of gas. It was a very good show. Kudos to you, gentlemen. I'm gone next week. I'm back the following week on November 8th. So these two gentlemen are going to be tackling Five Nights at Freddy's. I'm very jealous. Lord knows you guys are going to have some great things to say, at least some great talking points to say about Five Nights at Freddy's. I know you're excited.
Yeah, sorry I ran over there. I thought I had The Aviator, but I left it at my mom's house.
I trust you. I have the DVD of it as well. It's at my dad's house, for what that's worth. Dominic Guanzon, Joe Viso are back next week for their review of Five Nights at Freddy's. I am back the following week on November 8th. Thank you so much for watching. Subscribe if you haven't. Highlights posted on this very YouTube channel. For Joe Viso, Dominic Guanzon, and yours truly, this has been Sleepless with Steve.